Hello and welcome to another one of D's ADD videos. Today we're going to have an introduction to statistics by looking at some general terms that you should be very familiar with, some concepts you should know, and just basically get you started down this road of statistics. What is statistics? Statistics is the scientific study of data acquisition, its evaluation, and interpretation. So basically you're going to gather data and you're going to look at individuals, which are the objects being studied in the data. These can be people, animals, machines, programs, whatever the case may be. You're going to look at a characteristic of the individual that the data is examining. All right. There are different types of variables. There's a qualitative. It's going to be single versus married, high school versus college, or what city do you live in Texas? Is it Dallas, Austin, or Houston? And usually it's a yes or no where you count the frequency, how many times it occurs. All right. Now, if we have quantitative variables or numerical variables, are variables that take on numerical values. Okay, mostly in sports, you'll see stuff like that. Whether we're talking about free throw percentages, how far did they run, what was their time, weight, height, things like that. Anything that you can assign a number to it. Okay. And then there's ordinal. Again, you will find that typically in races. You're going to have ranking here. It's going to be a categorical variable in which there's a value assigned to the variable. So the easiest is winners of a race, first, second, and third. Or we could look at a survey, for instance. At the end of your stat class, you're going to take a survey saying, is it poor, fair, good, or maybe even excellent. I forgot to put excellent. Underestimated your teacher. So these are some basic variables that you'll encounter while discussing data. All right, we're going to be talking about data, but just know that statistics is pretty much in all fields. You pretty much have an entry into sports. Insurance companies want to know the statistics of your claims and accidents at different intersections. There's Wall Street, you name it, there's going to be a statistics somewhere involved in the process. So it's a good idea to get a firm grasp, if not delve deeper into statistics. All right. So, moving on, let's look at the data. What kind of data do we see? Well, we've already discussed these different things. Interval data are what you're going to see for the quantitative variables. So that's going to be real numbers like heights, distances, incomes, weights. Any calculations are fair game. All right. Nominal data were the categories that often are arbitrary numbers that are assigned to them. They have no value. All right. So because they have no actual meaning behind their value, you can only count and calculate stuff like percentages or just frequency. Just count them, okay, of the occurrences in each category. So frequency, proportions, or percentages. Now, in ordinal, there is meaning to the categories. All right. First is different than second, and is different than third. They are all places that you can be in a race, but here what you have to do is you have to be careful what calculations you can actually do here, because you can mess up when you do different things. You can run into problems. So try to stick with things like median here, where ranking is part of the measure of median, which we'll discuss later. All right. So you're going to acquire all this data, and you're going to see later on that there's going to be all these different types of distributions. All right. We're going to discuss these in detail. They're going to be normal distributions. You can see this is a continuous distribution because it's a smooth line. And most real life data is normal, where you have few people at the very top, few people at the very bottom, but most people are in the middle. All right. And these different curves represent different variances, which is width, and we'll discuss all that later on. All right, this is just an introduction video. Poisson is a discrete distribution and its probability of rare events, and we'll discuss that later on. Lambda is arrival rate, mean arrival rate. And then here we have uniform distributions in which between A and B there's a value, but anywhere else there's no value, 0 probability. And then geometric is another discrete distribution that's probability of first success. Okay, so you can see there's all these different distributions that have different parameters and different scenarios in which you choose these distributions. So make sure that you take your time when you're doing these problems, and as always, practice, practice, practice. So you might see some terms like outliers. Outliers are things that are to the extremes. The nerd that got the 100 on the test, and then the person that forgot there was a test that day and didn't even show up, got a 0. All right. You can be skewed positively or negatively. So if it's positively skewed, that means there's more data to the left. All right. So if you were to look at income, you'll see that there are a lot of people with lower incomes, but the really rich 1% are to the far right, and there's very few of those, and that's right skewed or positively skewed. If we're talking about left skewed or negatively skewed, for instance, so hours of sleep could be something else that we look at that's negatively skewed. Most people get 8 hours or more. Then there are very few people that get 2-3 hours like myself and are up working day and night. So there are terms you should know, such as population versus sample. Population would be all the college students, and sample would be a specific college, for instance, or entire NBA versus the Dallas Mavericks. Hopefully your sample is representative of the entire population. And when you do that, you come into parameters. Parameters deal with the population. And it's kind of hard to know the entire population's parameters sometimes. Sometimes you won't be able to know the entire standard deviation. Whereas if we're talking about statistics, that's something you measure and you can calculate from the sample. Later on, when we do some predictions and statistical inference, where we have certain confidence level of making a statement based on its significance level, its cutoff, we will be doing all kinds of things with statistics. So what I want you to do is just take your time, make sure you set a solid foundation, and as always, practice, practice, practice. Thank you and have a nice day.